Hey everyone, welcome back. It is Icon. Thank you so much for checking out another episode of Esports Analysis. In today's video, we're going to take a quick look back at what happened in Friday's matches, my predictions. We'll go through all the storylines, and then we'll break down all of the maps heading into Sunday, and I'll make my predictions for who I think is going to make it to the semifinals for Championship Sunday. So, real quick, just to recap what happened on Friday, my Group A was perfect. It went how I expected. My Group B was the exact opposite. So, just to start off here, we started up here in Group B with Toronto versus LAG. This was a fantastic series to watch, but in the end, LAG did end up winning it 3-2. They came out of the gates pretty hot, right? They won the Ramaza hardpoint by like 50, won the Arklov Peak Search and Destroy. So off the get-go, they were up 2-0. You figured it would be a pretty quick matchup. And then Hackney came and they lost the domination. They lost the Hackney hardpoint. In fact, that Hackney hardpoint might be the most dominant hardpoint we've seen the entire year. It was 250 to 84. So that was a complete blowout. And then when it came time for map 5, the Gunrunner Search and Destroy, LAG just clutched up. They ended up winning, and it's pretty clear, at least in Search and Destroy, that Saints coming back gave them quite the boost they were looking for. Overall, Saints had a 1.8 KD in Search and Destroy, and while the respawns might not have been all that great, he was like a 0.8, 0.95, somewhere in there in terms of hardpoint and dom. The Search and Destroy made a huge difference. So we can go ahead over here and we can move Ultra down below. We can put LAG back up into the winners bracket, and that will be our first matchup from there. Second map of the day was Atlanta versus Seattle, and unbelievable, right? This was another match where I absolutely could not believe what I was seeing. So just to recap real quick, Seattle came out of the gates, won the Azir Cave by about 75 points, clutched up in the Gunrunner Search and Destroy, won that 6-5. They went up 2-0. And then, of course, we had that 45-minute tech delay. We haven't really had an explanation for that. After this was over, some of the Seattle players kind of lost their cool. I would have liked to have seen. Now, trust me, I know that it's frustrating. I can only imagine what they were going through. But I just want to see a little bit more professionalism. We'll see what happens from the CDL. If they even come out and approach that scenario, we'll see what happens. But after those first two, Seattle went down in the domination. They got beat pretty bad, 199 to 123. And then it was the Gunrunner hardpoint that they lost by about 70. And then we went to St. Petrograd. It was the Search and Destroy. Went to that round 11. And unfortunately, Seattle wasn't able to clutch up. Ended up losing in round 11, 6-5. So Atlanta does escape by the skin of their teeth, but they did end up escaping there. One thing I'll say overall is that even though this was pretty close, everybody from Atlanta played pretty well outside of Priesta. If we're looking at the KDs, Simp had a 1.3, Celium had a 1.12, Abizi had a 1.1, Major Maniac had a 1.01. So everybody played pretty well except for Priesta. And then on the other side, I mean, what can you say? What more can you say about Octane? Overall, in this matchup, he was 118 and 83, which equates to a 1.42 kill death for Octane. So I get where some of his frustration is coming from because the man's playing out of his mind, right? He's playing absolutely one of the best players in the league this year, and he just doesn't have all that much to show for it. The rest of his teammates, Slacked had a 0.96. Everybody else was negative for the day. I will say that I think Proto gives a little bit or adds a little bit of speed to their lineup. So I'm interested to see what happens in their next matchup if they can pull out a victory, because it looks like they're all set up for that. Moving on, we then went to Florida versus Chicago, and this is another one where I just didn't see it coming, especially off the home series, the CDL Florida home series, where Florida, that was the last time we saw them. They went 0-2 in match count, 0-6 in map count. For this one, they just looked a little bit better overall, right? When we had the Gunrunner hardpoint, Chicago ended up winning that by 11. That was a super close match. After that, Florida took the Arklov Peak Search and Destroy 6-3. Wasn't very close at all. They won the Hackney domination 154 to 146. I felt like that one maybe could have been a little bit closer. The Ramaza hardpoint, Chicago won by 50, and then it came down to the Ramazza Search and Destroy. And when it got to that Ramazza Search and Destroy, Scump had that amazing 4-piece to extend it a little bit further. But I think Florida there was clearly the better team on that Ramazza Search and Destroy. They looked more well-versed. They kind of went around the map a little bit better. They just looked more comfortable overall. If we're talking about KDs, nobody really stood out. Nobody really was terrible. Farrell had a .74 for Florida, which obviously you want to see him do better than that. But overall, Skies had a 1.2. Most people would say Skies is kind of what's carrying that team at the moment. Awakening didn't do too terrible. His Search and Destroy wasn't really all that good. He had a .97 overall. But for the first tournament that he's played in, the first match, I would say that's pretty good overall. If we look down at Chicago, then nobody, the problem with Chicago here is nobody popped off, right? Arcees had a 1.09, Envoy had a 1.01, Formal had a 1.06, and Pristini and Scump were negative. So they just didn't get that typical like 1.3 from Envoy or something along those lines. Scump 1.2. Arcees had a fantastic tournament when they won the last event. He had like a 1.4 on championships on it, and we just didn't get that in this one. So Chicago goes down, which means we can go ahead and flip Chicago and Florida. We'll put Florida back up here into the winner's bracket. We'll put Chicago down to the loser's bracket. And then the last matchup of the day is Dallas and Minnesota. For this one, we guessed this one correctly. Came out of the gates, Minnesota won the Ramazza hardpoint 250 to 232. That was pretty close, right? I think it was probably a little bit closer than most people thought that was going to be. And then from there, Dallas is like the St. Petrograd team, right? Search and Destroy, they won 6-2. Domination, they won by 40, even though they probably could have won by a lot more. And then the hard point, they won by about 70. So overall, when you're looking at overall KDs, I want to start down here with Minnesota because Assault and God RX were positive, just barely positive. Alex from Minnesota had a .57 KD for the entire match here. So that's one of the worst KDs that I've seen this entire year for a player in an individual match. Hopefully he can figure it out going into tomorrow because we saw what Seattle did against Atlanta earlier. So if they don't figure it out, Silly had a .7, Asim had a .85. I mean, they have to come with some heat tomorrow because I think Seattle's going to be reinvigorated a little bit based off their performance that they had on day one. And then up above, Hugh was really... He was the storyline. Hugh had a 1.4. Shotzi had a 1.4. Clayster had a 1.2. But where I really was impressed was with Hugh and Shotzi. It seemed like 2-piece after 3-piece after 3-piece. These two just brought it. And Shotzi is starting to slowly but surely come into that role that Dallas needs him to be. They need a Slayer from that SMG position. Obviously, he's already shown kind of what he can do. I wish that we could see it a little bit more on land because I want to see what he brings to the table on land. If he's overcome that, I know he showed that a little bit at the LA event, the last LAN event where they ended up winning, but I'm just interested. I want to see the progression of the youngsters on Dallas. I just wish that we had the opportunity to do that. So with that, that goes through the recap of Saturday. So let's go ahead and let's start picking who I think's going to win and who I think's going to advance going into Saturday. So obviously, for Saturday, we're going to start off Florida versus LAG, the winner's bracket here for Group B. And this one is a tough one now, just because both teams, I thought, were missing something from their lineup, and they both showed up. But I have, and I can't even really tell you why, but I have a little bit more confidence in Florida right now. Even though Awakening didn't have, obviously, the best matchup or the best day one that he probably wanted to. He wasn't terrible like we talked about a couple minutes ago, but he wasn't great. But when you're talking about Skies and some of the other players that have really been showing up for a couple months now for Florida, I just have a tiny bit more confidence in Florida. I do think this is going to be a close matchup, but when it's all said and done, I see Florida moving on and LAG being in the losers bracket final. After that, we hop over, and this is going to be the matchup of the day, right? We have Atlanta versus Dallas, and given the struggles that Atlanta had against Seattle, I said this in my video yesterday, until somebody shows or until somebody knocks off Dallas, I just don't see how you don't pick them as the best team in the league. They showed they played really well against Minnesota on the St. Petrograd maps, and they came out of the gates a little bit slowly, but that's to be expected. They haven't played in like 47 days or something crazy like that. So with this, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to pick Dallas as the team to go 2-0 and make it out of group play first. I think Atlanta is going to go ahead and move down to the losers bracket final. That one really is a toss-up. I wouldn't be surprised if Atlanta won that, but until somebody knocks off Dallas, given that they looked really good on day one, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to stick with Dallas. After that, we have Chicago versus Toronto in the losers bracket final. And this is another one where Toronto came out, they gave LAG all that they could handle, whereas Chicago looked like they were playing catch up most of the day. But even with that, there seemed to be a lot of positivity from Envoy and from Pristini, where they went back after this match was over. They were tweeting out that they just made some silly mistakes. They watched the VOD. They learned from it a little bit. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go with Chicago. I wouldn't be surprised if they got beat just because Toronto is looking really good. Florida handled them fairly easily, right, in the grand scheme of things. I know it went to the map 5 and it went through all of that, but I just felt, like I said a couple seconds ago, I felt like Chicago was playing catch up that entire match. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to give this to Chicago. Ultra, unfortunately, although they've been playing well as of late and they put up a pretty good match in day one, and I think they'll put up a good fight against Chicago in day 2. I think they're going to go home. I think they're going to be 0-2. After that, we're going to go over back to Group A. We're going to have Minnesota versus Seattle. And this one, given what Seattle just did against Atlanta, it's hard to pick some of these matchups, right? Because conventionally, if you're taking the entire season as a whole and you're putting it into consideration, then you would pick Minnesota. But based off of Seattle basically almost beating Atlanta yesterday, I mean, what team looks better? Seattle looks better right now based on what they did in day one. And if you're looking at the KDs with what happened with Minnesota, and a lot of people were negative, Alex had the worst KD that I've seen of this entire season. This one is a toss-up for me, whereas I don't know, just a couple months ago, Rocker, I think most people would have as the 4th best team. With that being said, I'm not sold on Seattle yet. Everybody before this matchup with Atlanta had them as the worst team in the league. So I'm going to go ahead and based off of the consistency, I'm going to put Minnesota through. Now, if Minnesota loses to Seattle, I think they're in trouble because the confidence will be gone. Who knows what's going on behind closed doors, but I just don't see them. I don't know. It's hard for me to believe that they would lose this matchup to Seattle. But with that being said, Octane obviously gives Seattle the advantage at the AR position. Then will Proto be able to come and be a little bit more aggressive, or maybe not so much aggressive, but just be a little bit more productive, come from like a 0.7, 0.8 up to like a 1.0. We'll see if he's able to provide what Seattle needs to make that next step. That's a matchup that I'm really interested in tomorrow. Then to round off day 2, we have to go through our losers bracket final. So this will take us all the way up through Sunday. So we'll go ahead. We'll start with LAG versus Chicago. Again, in the first matchup, LAG looked pretty good against Toronto. I do have them losing to Florida in that matchup, but will we see the consistency out of LAG that they need? I don't know. So many things are up in the air right now. When you're talking about LAG, Saints provided quite a bit in that search and destroy that they were missing, but Blast had a really good day on day one. Decimate was pretty good. Aqua and Vivid and Saints overall were a little bit negative, but what will they give us in a matchup against Chicago? I just don't know if it will be enough, right? If Chicago comes out and they have a great day and Envoy and Scump are the typical Envoy and Scump, and Arcity's had a really bad day on day one also. That's something that we haven't really talked much about. In the event that Chicago won, the last event that they won, Arcity's was on fire. So to me, he really is kind of what you need to be looking at, right? He's the key. If Arcity's has like a 1.3, 1.4, they're going to be hard to beat with what you normally get consistently out of Envoy and some of the other SMGs on Chicago. So even though they struggled on day one, I do think Chicago's going to go through, and that will put them into a matchup with Dallas. I cannot wait to see this. I still don't know if anybody can beat Dallas, but this is a matchup, if it goes to be true, that we'll talk about in tomorrow's video. And then we will end this with Atlanta versus Rocker, the last matchup of the day. And I'm really interested to see what Atlanta does earlier in the day, right? Do they play well against Dallas? Do they struggle again? Do they lose 3-0? I mean, I don't know. Even though Atlanta beat Seattle, it definitely wasn't pretty. Minnesota, we all know the struggles that they had and they've been having as of late. I hate to do this, but I do think Atlanta's probably still the better team there, so they're going to go ahead and make it through. So our finals or our semifinals going into Sunday will be set. I think that the winner of Group A is going to be Dallas playing the winner of the losers bracket in Group B, which will be Chicago. Cannot wait to see that matchup. Then the winner coming out of Group B will be Florida. My guess would be nobody probably picked that to happen based off of CDL Florida and how they did at their home event, going up against the loser from Group A, which will be Atlanta FaZe. So this is one of those videos down below. Let me know what your predictions are. Do you agree with what I have? Do you disagree? Do you think LAG will make it? Do you think Chicago will struggle? They won't get out. Will Minnesota figure it out? Will they get out? Will they lose to Seattle? So many storylines heading into Saturday. I can't wait to watch how it all unfolds. If you're new around here, you enjoy this sort of content, I put out brand new videos analyzing the Call of Duty League every single day, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. Again, comments, I can't wait to read them down below. Leave a like before you head on the way. It really helps out the channel. And with that, guys, thank you so much. Enjoy Saturday of CDL Minnesota. I will see you in tomorrow's upload.